There was a time when you didn't even know you were being manipulated. You were just being yourself, soft-hearted, kind, trusting, always believing that if your intentions were pure, others would treat you the same. You thought love meant giving, and giving more, and giving again. But behind the smiles and the gestures, something darker was working, slowly bending your soul to fit into a mold that wasn't yours. They weren't just loving you, they were studying you. And once they saw how much light you carried, they decided they could use it, not honor it, not protect it, use it. It started small, a guilt trip here, a subtle comparison there, a tone of disappointment in someone's voice when you chose yourself for once. You thought it was your fault. You thought you had to be more forgiving, more patient, more silent. But the truth is, many of them saw your innocence as a doorway. They believed you wouldn't notice their games. And for a while, you didn't. Because you believed in people. Because you saw the best in them. Because you assumed no one would come into your life just to manipulate your spirit. But oh, they did. And now, they're paying for it. What they didn't expect was that your awakening would become their collapse, that your healing would trigger their breakdown. You are not who you used to be, and they can feel that now in the silence, in the distance, in the peace that no longer includes them. The ones who feasted on your light are now starving for their own, and as your spirit rises, so does the weight of their karma. They are paying greatly, and it's only the beginning. If this message is already stirring something deep inside you, I want you to pause and write in the comments, "I break the chain. I protect my light." Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because these messages are here to awaken the part of you they tried to bury. You didn't see it at first, how their words twisted just enough to make you second-guess yourself, how the compliments came with invisible strings, how the love you thought you were receiving was actually a performance, designed to make you easier to control. You were never weak. You were open. You were trusting. But to the wrong people, that looked like opportunity. To them, your light was too bright to be honored. It had to be dimmed. So they tried, little by little, to break you without ever looking like villains. They told you that you were too much, too emotional, too intense, too sensitive. But in truth, you were just deeply alive. They couldn't handle the mirror your soul held up to their shadows. So instead of rising, they tried to drag you back into their confusion. They gaslighted you into believing that your love was a burden, that your intuition was paranoia, that your boundaries were selfish. And you, wanting to keep the peace, started to abandon yourself, again and again, just to make them comfortable. They saw something in you they didn't understand, something holy, something free, something dangerous to people who live in masks. You were not like them, and they knew it. You didn't play the game. You didn't manipulate. You didn't perform. You just were. And that terrified them, because you made them feel exposed. They couldn't lie to themselves the same way anymore. And so they did what many unhealed people do. They turned your purity into a target. They made your soul their battlefield. And still, you gave. You tried to understand them. You thought love could fix it, that if you just loved them better, deeper, softer, they would change. But love is not supposed to hurt like that. Real love doesn't require your silence. Real love doesn't demand your destruction. You weren't being loved. You were being harvested. They took your empathy and twisted it into obligation. They made your loyalty feel like a trap. And worst of all, they made you believe that you chose it. You thought you were giving yourself freely. But now you see they were taking, carefully, calculated, with practiced hands. They took your presence and turned it into addiction. They took your peace and fed off of it like wolves in sheep's clothing. And you, beautiful soul, were too busy digesting everyone else's pain to even notice you were bleeding. You kept showing up, kept forgiving, kept softening, until there was almost nothing left of you for yourself. But even then, the divine was watching. What they didn't know is that your heart was protected by something they could never manipulate. Heaven saw everything. Every lie they told in your name. Every time they twisted the story to make themselves the victim. Every time they minimized your pain to inflate their ego. They didn't just lie to you, they lied to God about you. And there is a price for touching what is sacred. You didn't have to seek revenge. You didn't have to expose them. Because now, the exposure is coming from within them. Now that you're healing, your absence is more powerful than your presence ever was. They don't just miss you. They are haunted by the version of themselves they became while trying to break you. They thought you wouldn't recover, that you'd stay stuck, that you'd lose faith in everything, even God. And for a moment, you almost did. But that was when the divine stepped in. That was when everything shifted. Because when you were finally broken, something new was born in you. Something they never saw coming. They were sent into your life, not just to hurt you, but to reveal you to yourself. They were the final test before your elevation. They mimicked your soul tribe, looked like love, sounded like truth, but carried a distortion so subtle that only pain could expose it. And it did, because the very moment they tried to close your heart, they activated the part of you that would never die, the part of you that was always watching, always waiting, always connected to the divine, even in silence. And what they mistook as weakness was actually a kind of divine slowness, the slow burn of spiritual justice preparing to be unleashed. These people were never meant to stay. They were assignments, spiritual catalysts sent to force your boundaries to awaken, to teach you to stop giving your soul on autopilot. They came with purpose, but not the one you thought. They came to trigger the collapse of a version of you that was built on pleasing others and sacrificing your own truth. They didn't come to love you. They came to reveal what in you still needed healing, protection, and authority. And as painful as it was, they did exactly that. You're not broken because of them. You're reborn in spite of them. You may have called them soulmates. You may have believed they were sent by God. But now you see, some were sent through permission, but not by divine intention. They were allowed to cross your path so that your discernment could sharpen like a sword, so that your desperation for connection could die and give birth to real sacred standards. They mimicked what you prayed for, but left you with wounds instead of growth. That's how you know. That's how you see the truth now. Because when someone is truly sent by the Most High, they don't leave you in spiritual confusion and emotional debt. The enemy wanted to make you question everything, even your worth, even God. That was the real plan. To whisper through them, "You're unlovable. You're too much. You're always the problem." But God had another agenda, because in their betrayal, you found your identity. In their silence, you heard your soul speak. In their rejection, you learned to sit in divine presence and realize you were never alone to begin with. Their cruelty became your turning point. And that, chosen one, is divine reversal. That's the part they never saw coming. Your absence is now loud. Your healing is disruptive. Your peace is unbearable for those who once fed on your suffering. You were the supply, the emotional fix, the soul they thought would never walk away. But you did. And you didn't just walk, you ascended. Now, everything they projected onto you is circling back to them like smoke returning to the one who set the fire, and they are choking on it. Not because you cursed them, but because you finally stopped giving them access to your spirit. You never had to fight them. Your liberation was the fight. Every time you chose to stay silent instead of explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaimed your power. Every time you stopped chasing those who never valued you, the universe rebalanced itself. What they stole from you in manipulation You're recovering in divine restoration. And while they crumble under the weight of their own deception, you rise with clarity, with purpose, and with spiritual authority. You are not just surviving, you are embodying justice. And now, the most ironic part, they miss what they destroyed. They long for the version of you that bent over backward, that dimmed your light to keep them comfortable, that gave endlessly without asking for anything in return. But that version of you no longer exists. It died in the fire they lit, and now you walk with a different glow, one that cannot be manipulated, seduced, or used. You walk with wisdom in your bones. You walk with God, and that makes you untouchable to every spirit that once had access to your soul. There's a sacred irony to all of this, because while they plotted to drain you, they actually triggered your transformation. They thought they were breaking you, but they were preparing you. They thought they were stealing your energy, but they were only activating your discernment, your depth, your divine memory. They thought they could shape your identity, but all they did was sharpen it. You see, God allowed the illusion because the pain would push you into a reality more authentic than anything you had ever known. A reality where you no longer give yourself to people who haven't earned access to your soul. They underestimated the divine protection wrapped around your life. They saw you as an easy target, someone who would never walk away, someone too loving to ever stop giving. But what they didn't know is that the Most High doesn't play about His children. He watches every tear. He remembers every silent breakdown. He counts every moment you gave your best to people who were only there to exploit you. And in that stillness, when you were alone, doubting, shattered, He was rewriting your story, not to make you cold, but to make you clear. And now that you're clear, you see it all differently. You see how they used guilt to control your boundaries, how they weaponized your compassion, how they made your light feel like a liability. You see how every time you shrank yourself to keep them close, you were actually stepping away from your own purpose. But no more. This clarity is painful, but it is sacred. It is the kind of vision that costs you illusions, but gives you authority. You're not in the dark anymore. You've come out of the fog. And once the fog clears, you can never unsee the truth. They're spiraling now, not because you cursed them, but because they cursed themselves by touching what was sacred and pretending it was disposable. You were never theirs to consume. You were never meant to be used. And the more they realize what they lost, the heavier their reality becomes. Their guilt is a sentence they can't escape from. Because they didn't just hurt anyone, they hurt someone divine. And when you harm the innocent for personal gain, the universe always responds with exacting precision. That's not superstition. That's law. Every attempt they made to distort you is now being reflected back at them. The chaos they created in your heart is now blooming in their own minds. The loneliness they left you in is now chasing them. That silent void they left you with, it now echoes in their spirit. And the scariest part for them? No one is coming to save them the way you would have. They burned the very bridge that connected them to mercy. And now they must face themselves, without your light to soften the truth. Meanwhile, you're learning the difference between giving from overflow and giving from survival, between being generous and being sacrificial. You're learning that you matter too, that your peace is sacred, that your voice is holy. And slowly, but surely, you're rebuilding a life where love is no longer confused with suffering. You're discovering what it means to be whole, not because someone loves you, but because you finally love you. That's the true revolution. That's the real revenge. Wholeness. You're not meant to carry everyone. You're not here to bleed for those who wouldn't even offer you a bandage. That was the old you, the one who thought unconditional love meant unconditional self-abandonment. But now, you're rewriting that contract. You're choosing peace over chaos, clarity over fantasy, purpose over pain. And with every step away from what once drained you, you reclaim a part of yourself that you never should have lost. This is what spiritual sovereignty feels like, and you're walking in it now, unbothered, unchained, and unrecognizable to your former captors. You were never sent here to be everyone's healer while silently drowning in your own wounds. That's the deception they placed on you, that your worth was measured by how much you could endure, how much you could give without asking for anything in return. But endurance without boundaries is not love, it's martyrdom. And heaven never called you to die for people who were never willing to live in truth beside you. The old version of you was addicted to potential, to seeing the best in people even when their actions were drenched in darkness. But the new you, the one rising now, you're no longer addicted to illusions. You see people for what they are, not just what they could be. And that sight, that clarity, is divine. It's not bitterness, it's wisdom, and it's dangerous to every spirit that once fed on your blindness. You're no longer offering sanctuary to those who come to consume and not to contribute. Your presence is no longer free to those who used to buy access with guilt and false promises. This is what it means to walk in spiritual maturity, to love without allowing yourself to be devoured, to forgive without granting re-entry, to let go, not because you hate them, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who call it rain. This is not pride. This is protection. This is you reclaiming the sacredness of your spirit. And believe me, the realm that once mocked your softness is now terrified of your silence. They don't understand who you've become because they never truly saw you to begin with. They were interacting with the version of you that had to survive, the version that begged for crumbs, over-explained, and stayed loyal to patterns that were slowly killing your spirit. But now that version is gone, and what remains is someone they can't manipulate, can't read, can't reach. You've become foreign to their dysfunction, and that's why they feel the void more than ever. Because what they abused is gone, and what replaced it is protected by divine fire. You're not the lesson anymore. You're the consequence. They didn't realize that every time they devalued you, they were writing their own karmic script. Every lie they told, every emotional trap they set, every boundary they crossed. It's all coming back now, and not in fragments, in full. That's the power of the law of return. You're not casting spells. You're not playing their game. You're just healing, rising, detaching. And that alone is sending spiritual shockwaves through every life that tried to distort your worth. You are walking karma, and heaven wrote your name in fire. And now that you're awake, everything feels different. You don't walk the same. You don't talk the same. Your discernment has a sharpness to it. Your eyes don't just see, they penetrate. You can feel energy shift when someone's intentions aren't pure. You can sense manipulation before it even takes form. This isn't paranoia. This is what happens when you've been baptized by betrayal. Your intuition is no longer soft and confused. It's accurate. It's immediate. It's sacred intelligence that can't be taught, only earned. Through fire, through tears, through spiritual death and resurrection. People who once played God in your life are now begging for answers. They don't understand why their peace is gone, why their mind feels heavy, why their luck has shifted. But you do. You understand that when you remove divine light from a place, darkness takes over. You were their grace, and they took it for granted. They thought they could mishandle you without consequence. But the consequence was you walking away. And now, every lie they told themselves about you is unraveling. The truth is rising, and it's echoing louder than their denial can silence. This season is not about revenge. It's about revelation. It's about seeing clearly who you are and why you survived what you did. It's about knowing that your pain was never in vain, that your heartbreak was holy, that the manipulation you endured didn't make you weak, it made you wise. You're not naive anymore. You're not here to prove yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You're here to honor your calling, to protect your energy, to walk in truth without flinching. That's what spiritual evolution looks like, and you're wearing it now, boldly, unapologetically, divinely. You were trained to feel guilty for protecting yourself. That was the root of their manipulation, convincing you that self-preservation was selfish, that speaking your truth was aggression, that boundaries were betrayal. But the truth is, your love was never the problem. Your heart wasn't too much. It was just too sacred for people who hadn't yet chosen to meet themselves. You didn't fail them by loving them. They failed themselves by misusing what was divine. And now you finally understand. The ones who used your kindness against you were never strong. They were weak souls who tried to mask their emptiness by draining someone full of life. And you were overflowing. Until now. It's not your job to fix the people who were sent to destroy your clarity. Let that truth settle in your bones. You are not a rehabilitation center for souls that refuse to be honest with themselves. You are not a savior for those who mocked your light. You are not required to keep bleeding for people who have no intention of ever stopping the cut. That was the old paradigm, the one where you thought love meant saving, rescuing, and staying even when your spirit was screaming for you to run. But you're not there anymore. Now, you see the truth. Saving yourself was the most sacred act of love you could ever perform. And you did. You're doing it. Every single day you choose your peace over their chaos, heaven rejoices. You were never meant to shrink to make others feel comfortable. That narrative was injected into your soul by those who feared your presence, not those who truly valued it. The ones who manipulated you were never confused. They were strategic. They knew exactly what they were doing. They saw your innocence and immediately calculated how they could mold it, bend it, exploit it. That's not love. That's spiritual theft. But the beautiful part? Every piece they tried to steal is returning to you now, purified, fortified, elevated. What was lost is being restored, not in the same form, but in a version that can no longer be touched by unclean hands. And let's be honest, you were desperate, not because you were weak, but because you had gone so long unseen, so long unreceived, so long without true reflection. You weren't looking for fantasy, you were searching for resonance. And when someone came along wearing the costume of your soul tribe, you clung to them like air. You opened too fast. You poured too deep. But it wasn't your fault. That was the child in you still hoping someone would finally see the full picture, not just the convenient parts. That child is finally being held now, by you, by your higher self, by God. And she's learning that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. They were actors, playing roles they couldn't sustain. They spoke in spiritual language. They mirrored your wounds. They pretended to match your frequency, but they couldn't sustain it. Because authenticity can't be performed. It has to be embodied. And when their mask slipped, your soul shattered. Because it wasn't just heartbreak. It was the collapse of hope, of belief, of trust in your own ability to discern truth. But now that the dust has settled, you see clearly. The performance is over, and what remains is a wiser version of you, not bitter, but refined. And here's the divine twist. Those who tried to manipulate you were also being used, not just by the enemy, but by heaven. They were being used as mirrors, as fire, as divine sandpaper to polish your discernment. Their assignment was never to bless you. It was to break what needed breaking in you so that your true self could rise. They were never the destination. They were the detour that made you realize what you will never tolerate again. And now, the Most High is releasing your real blessings, not the imitations. Not the mirages, but the people, the places, and the paths that align with your soul's true blueprint. And so, you no longer look back with longing. You look back with revelation. You realize that the people who manipulated you were necessary only because you hadn't yet chosen yourself fully. But now that you have, they no longer hold power. Their spells are broken. Their influence is dissolved. Your light no longer bends for them. It blinds them. And while they sit in the ruins of their own deception, you walk forward with peace that can't be faked, with power that can't be explained, and with purpose that was always hidden in your pain. You are the fulfillment of what they feared most, someone who not only survived them, but transcended them. You were never just a person in their lives. You were a divine interruption, a sacred detour, a mirror they didn't ask for, but desperately needed. And when they couldn't control you, they tried to destroy you. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your light revealed everything false in them. You didn't expose them with words. You exposed them by simply existing. And now, their conscience is louder than ever. Every attempt to twist the narrative is unraveling. Every false version of you they sold to others is collapsing under the weight of truth. You never needed to prove anything. Time, karma, and divine order are proving everything for you. That's the beauty of divine justice. It doesn't need applause. It just moves. So now, as your life begins to elevate quietly, steadily, and powerfully, remember this: you owe no one access to your peace. You don't need to explain your distance. You don't need to apologize for protecting your energy. You've spent years trying to make others comfortable while you were spiritually suffocating. But those days are over. You are walking with angels now. You are guided by clarity, not desperation. And your presence is no longer random. It's divine strategy. The version of you they mistreated was still learning. The version you are now is untouchable. And that is the karma no one saw coming. If this message echoed something sacred inside you, leave a comment below and write, "I reclaim my light. I choose myself." Let this be a declaration to the universe and a reminder to yourself that you are no longer for sale, no longer accessible to confusion, and no longer in alignment with emotional parasites. Please leave your like if this word brought clarity to your spirit, and make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because every video on this channel is designed to reconnect you with your truth, your power, and your divine assignment. You were not meant to blend in. You were meant to awaken. I also want to take a moment to thank everyone who has supported us through Buy Me a Coffee. Your support helps us grow, expand our vision, and bring even more depth and excellence to this sacred space. If you'd like to support the channel, the link is in the first pinned comment. Every offering is received with gratitude and reinvested in creating divine content that heals, reveals, and empowers. And if you feel led to go deeper, don't stop here. Watch the video that's being recommended on your screen right now. It will take you even further into the truth they tried to hide from you. Stay safe, stay covered, and stay sovereign. You're not alone. You were just always chosen. Until next time, with love and truth. I'll see you in the next video.